Good evening, good morning to our transatlantic audiences. My name is Lilia Kudelia and I'm the guest curator at Residency Unlimited. Thank you for joining us for the third chapter of Meets and Bounds, a series of monthly conversations with the laureates of the Young Visual Artists Awards program. YVAA is a network of 12 national awards that provide young artists from Eastern, Central, and Southern Europe with a 2-month residency hosted by Residency Unlimited in New York. And the program takes place on an annual basis since 2015. As some of you may know from the previous talks, the title Meets and Bounds comes from a term used in cartography and real estate and refers to the method of surveying land that has been used for many centuries for the definition of general boundaries. The idea behind our program is to outline the contact zones and understand the reasons that either create places or quite often pull the regions apart and enable the formation of borders, infrastructural, mental, economic, or else. So before diving in, I would like to thank the team of Residency Unlimited for helping to organize today's event. And special thanks to the Trust for Mutual Understanding for their support and for making this wonderful artist exchange program possible. Today we'll speak with 2 artists whose practice I maybe speculatively really want to connect under one umbrella. The conversation will last around 40 minutes between us, and you are very welcome to leave your questions in a chat or later at the end, raise a hand and we can let you speak and articulate your question to the artist. So we have Žarko Aleksić with us, who is the winner of 2020 Dmitrije Basevich-Mangelis Award. Currently, he's a researcher at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, and his artistic practice is based on the examination of consciousness, mental processing, and artificial intelligence in relation to sociopolitical issues caused by surveillance capitalism. Žarko studied philosophy at Belgrade University and later majored in art and photography at the Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna. His recent solo and group shows took place at Kunsthalle Zurich, Marchetta Foundation and Remont Gallery in Belgrade, Kino Šiška in Ljubljana, Musa Stadtgalerie and Angewandt Festival in Vienna, Zentrum für Kunst und Urbanistik in Berlin, and many more. Žarko also presented his works and lectures at multiple universities, conferences, and seminars, and he's the founder of the informal group Umetnik. Hi, Žarko. You're tuning in from Vienna, right? Okay. Mila Panić is the winner of 2021's Bono Award for Artists in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where she was born. Mila studied at the Academy of Arts, University of Banja Luka in Bosnia, and has an MFA in public art and new artistic strategies from the Bauhaus Universität Weimar in Germany. Mila currently lives in Berlin. Her practice ranges from personalized documentation such as drawings and family videos and work with found footage to highly poetic visual and discursive elements that attempt to capture and interpret various repercussions and effects of migration. Mila's works were exhibited at Kunsthaus Dresden, Moscow Biennale for Young Art, at Künstlerhaus Vienna, National Museum of Contemporary Art in Skopje, North Macedonia, and Mediterranean 19 Young Artists Biennale in San Marino, Italy, among many other locations. She's the initiator of Fully Funded Residencies, which is a platform and association for faster and easier overview of artistic residencies, mobility funds, and grants for artists. So Mila and Žarko, thank you so much for being with us today. In preparation for our talk, I played with rhymes a little and defined the topic as synapses and time lapses. The first word directly relates to what Žarko is dealing with for years, this inner workings of the nervous system and the implications that neuroscientific knowledge has on the development of systems of control and power, including the implementation of various manipulative techniques in societies. When I think of synapses in relation to your practice, Mila, the first project that comes to mind is your burning fields installation. And maybe we can share, if you could share your own screen.
Okay, a moment.
Yes, to the installation burning field, as I said, that is meant to affect the viewer almost viscerally through a large screen projection, this realistic portrayal of a fire spreading via landscape. I hope maybe that later today in the conversation you can tell us exactly what landscape it is and what you hope to achieve with this form. And although each of your theoretical apparatuses and methodologies differ, the common thread that I find in your works is the desire to map interrelations between economic and psychological conditions of individuals. And since personal narrative and reflections on your own biography take also a very significant place in your projects, I think that you map these dependencies convincingly well. I appreciate that today we have a chance to look at your practice from different perspectives, because again, we're trying to build this dialogue between the two of you, and I hope we can share more nuanced explanations of selected projects. And to start, I would like to first talk about the differences between the categories of memory and nostalgia as it pertains to your work. So Žarko, if you could talk first about the role of that MRI brain scans play in your projects, and how are those magnetic resonance images that you take are different as a source material for your work, are different, for example, from the video, or as you call those video inputs that you record regularly, and how do you employ those large data sets? Let me see those.
Okay, should I share my screen then? Okay. Definitely I'm using a lot of methods what are very often used in medical and neuroscientific investigation of the brain. On one side, I'm very rigorously trying to employ those techniques and methods, and on the other, what is actually my primary interest is the phenomenology, or what is going on in ourselves while we are, like, passing through life, through various interaction with the environment. For example, how we perceive, what are how our imagination works, and all those mental phenomena and mental images that are happening in our brain is actually my main kind of interest. But to access those very private states, in scientific terms, we try to observe brain from various perspectives and with various methods, and very often we try to use some of the methods that I'm employing, for example, in this project Brain Pictures. I don't know how much into detail and in depth I should go. It is actually a very long or very huge and complex project, so I will try just to give you a small insights what I did and what the whole project is all about, just to, like, set the tracks for, for people who are maybe more interested to go deeper, because definitely it cannot be presented in short kind of mediated talk on the on internet very easily. So basically, I was very much interested in mental images and how imagination actually is in relation to perceptions. Basically, I'm interested in how we construct images, those collages of sense data that we are having from the outside world, that are colliding with our inner understanding, with our inner images and imaginations. And basically, since I'm the subject and the object of the investigation that I'm doing, I'm trying to be very rigorous in applying those techniques, but in the same time, it deviates from a scientific understanding, because although, as I said, scientifically very rigorously, I'm trying to employ those experimentation, I am somehow involved on the both end. I am the subject and the object, which automatically excludes me from the scientific understanding of those domains. Basically, what I did, I spent almost 7 days in those scanners with some pauses, of course. What I did, I tried to establish the relation between imagination and perception. And I used technique which is called functional magnetic resonance imaging, which basically tracks oxygenation or oxygen in our blood flow in the brain. And which area of the brain, I cannot dive deep right now, but just to try to simplify a bit complex topic that so many people, involved, and it's somehow very hot topic in the understanding of the brain neuroscientific investigation with the MRI. Basically, I was inside of the scanner, and the experiment consisted of me watching at some images, and then that magnetic resonance image, that barrel, basically scanned my brain, trying to map which area of the brains are working while I'm observing certain images. So basically in the state of perception. And then after, I close my eyes and imagine all those images and then my brain is scanned again. So I tried to make a correspondence. I tried to contrast those images or scans of the brain in the situation of perception and imagination. And the result is that 94% of those activation patterns for imagination and perception are similar, saying that very similar activity of the brain is employed while we are imagining and perceiving, which further have some kind of not claims, but further we can understand that those kind of images of our mental images could somehow interact with those from sense data. So it is not clear where those imagination ends and where the understanding of objective world starts. And that's somehow the crucial point of the whole research, although, as I said, it is much more complex, and I don't know if we should go into details, but that would be the kind of the most important aspect of this experimentation. After that, I'm developing certain artworks that are working on those knowledge that I gathered, that mental images and perceptual images are very similarly interpreted in the brain. So basically, I'm constructing some artworks which are for the mental imagination and not with the sense data. Very similar type of work was done by Pierre Huyghe for his exhibition he did in Serpentine Gallery 2019, which is titled Umwelt. So very similar approach is undertaken here as well. I don't know if that's attempt to give you certain hints.
That gives us a great motivation to understand better. And the image you are sharing now on the screen is part of the installation you had, right? And this is just one component of a larger.
Yes, because what interests me is that installation, the work is actually consisted in the installation, and what is very important for me is that the whole passing through the exhibition, the movement of the observer is actually constructing the work. So the work is set up. This is just the entrance to the space where the actual exhibition happens, and I wanted to play with this visibility and invisibility. We see the imprint of my brain, but in the same time, we cannot deduce anything from the image itself. We don't know what is happening when we just observe the brain of an artist. And I played a little bit with the title of this specific artwork for this exhibition. It is titled A Self-Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man, based on the Joyce novel, and it basically starts from here, but then you enter into the project, and then you see those images that are brain scans and from the actual experiments, and the video works that are constructions of from the knowledge, where I give certain inputs for the people to construct those mental images and those works inside of their brains, because I think that for my understanding of the artwork, for the ontology of the artwork is actually constructed in the brain of the viewer, not necessarily what is the sense data that is emitting, but the viewer or the viewer share is not important, it is crucial in my understanding. And that's why, for me, experience played a crucial role in the art. I don't believe in the objecthood of artwork, but rather on the experience. And that, I mean, my understanding of my position in the art world is very much related to somehow to New York and the conceptual avant-garde from 60s and 70s. So Lucy Lippard and the materialization of an art object, basically. So yeah, that's the starting point, is this image that I showed, this image. And then when you enter into the actual exhibition, you can interact with various parts of the whole installation that consist of those brain scans and experiments when I spent some 7 days. Then neural net part of the work, which is a series of video works where I'm giving instruction for imagination of those works. And the last, but maybe not the least point of the this project that lasted, I needed some time, you know, like more than 4 years I was working on this project, because just technically to get to the access for those very expensive devices is super complicated and super expensive if you don't have some kind of institutional support. But this, for example, this last part plays with the non-invasive brain stimulation, where I applied something which is called transcranial magnetic stimulation. Basically, it's a magnetic pulse on the part of the brain which is used to process visual stimuli in the area V1, and it constructs phenomenology like you are in the dark, but you see some white dots. And then I played with this idea of Dishan again, because Dishan is somehow very important for my artistic practice on various positions, somehow that on the cerebral aspect of art. So you don't have when you close your eyes and you have that application of the TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, you see some white dots in front of you, but those white dots are actual artwork which is not applied through your retina visually, but directly through the nervous system. If I should simplify completely this artwork, the idea is very much brain in the wet, or this idea from Matrix, basically, where the whole phenomenology is a simulation of what is going on in our brain. And the idea of Matrix is that all very precise phenomenology could be simulated just, you know, like picking right parts of the brain. And this idea is tried to be criticized here as well.
Great. So I would like to pick up on your conversation about imagination and perception, because it seems to be a great bridge to Mila's work, who works with found footage and family and video archives. And Mila, to me, when I just first looked at some of your pieces, some of your projects, I thought of Roland Barthes, obviously, and his idea of punctum, in a sense, as he applied it to photography, in a sense that there is this element of this sensory, very intensely subjective effect of the images. If you could tell us, how did you realize the need to utilize your family albums and video materials from the family archives for your art projects in the first place, and how this methodology developed?
Okay, I'm gonna share the screen now, and I hope the keynote is gonna work good. Just a moment. Yeah, so I guess you were referring to my earliest work. Actually, Happy Birthday is one of my first works, and this methodology of actually searching around yourself and digging through family photos, I think it was more method in these early stages when I was still a student in Bosnia, rather to understand situations around me than to inform my own opinion rather than to impose certain opinion about something. And happy birthday, it's also 12 found photographs that were took on my birthday. And here is just 2 photographs, but it's actually each step of how to kill a pig. And this is something that was found not just in my albums, in my family albums, but across my friends and people I knew with similar situations, some kind of ritual, of course, that we know that it's quite present in Balkan region. And from there, I started to dig even more to the footages that I could find. And then I rewatched the tapes that we were receiving in early 2000s from my family. Part of my family moved to Australia in late, like in 1999, during the post-war migrations. And back then I was a kid, I was like 10, 11, but once I rewatched it during my studies, I noticed some kind of absurdity in all these images and what we were actually exposed to and what opinion I created back then. In my imagination, not knowing much, I was thinking like being refugee, it was actually a dream come true because of the materials we were receiving. And this is also actually a phenomenon on this region that everyone was sending back VH tapes or photographs, just kind of showing to people who stayed behind, so to say, how good they managed their life. So, but you know, what I noticed that my family was quite particular in describing every detail of their life. For example, like 36 images of their round pool, or very like doubled images of every object or every brand that they have in the house. And I felt that this was more saying about my life in Bosnia rather than their life in Australia. And later I will come back to this topic in the work on Tante aus Deutschland, Aunt from Germany, because there were some pieces of puzzle missing. Of course, I was just seeing, okay, not just me, but a lot of people, okay, you created a great life there, you got everything, you have a cake, you have your bedroom and the car, everything what we were not able at that time to have. And I think in this early year, 2013 and 14, the methodology of working still stayed the same. I rather like to speak with other people that are, in most cases, they do not interact so much with art and culture. And like whether those are neighbors in the village where I come from or people from different professions that do not consume per se, like going to exhibitions, reading about art and culture, what's going on in this sphere. So I rather like to see their opinion on the topics I like to deal with or have interest to deal with. So yeah, maybe later we come to Tante aus Deutschland.
Yeah, yes, that's a nice bridge to talk about ideas of empathy, because the conversation that the three of us had preceding this talk, we agreed that also fundamentally each of your work raises questions about these mechanisms of empathy. And maybe if we have more time later, you can also talk about experimenting with your interest in stand-up comedy as well. You both changed your initial residency places around the same time, right? Like moving from, Žarko moved from Serbia to Vienna in 2013 to study. Mila moved from Bosnia to Berlin in 2014. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So for you, there is this fact of existing between here and there. And under this condition, I feel like the need for self-moderation also crystallizes over time. There are romantic thoughts about possible, impossible return, and they also have to coexist with those narratives of migration that are constantly being fed in societies through institutions and environment overall. Yeah, since you already mentioned, Mila, the Tante aus Deutschland project, I really love how you poetically refer to your own aunts as this mythological goddesses of migration, how you bring it to a very interesting category that you come up here. Tell us, why did you choose this format of a talk show? And were there any unexpected results during your process of interviewing your relatives in front of the camera for the project?
Well, I think at the time, that was early 2019, I had a very boring job here in Berlin where I had plenty of time to think. And I was in a very uncomfortable situation myself with visa after finishing I was not student anymore, so my status changed, and with that, of course, other difficulties and problems came. And my family, I have two aunts that live in Frankfurt, and since 90s, they moved in 91 and 92 as very young women with 18 and 19. And they were sort of my source of wisdom, so to say, or like just it's like family, so they care about you and they want to help you to not repeat the same mistakes, I think. And whenever I would visit them, we would like just sit in the kitchen and they would like try to impose me their own opinions on the problems that maybe are not even remotely the same as they had before. But I found this very interesting because it was also telling a lot about their own experiences, something that I was not so hearing so much from regular panel discussions, or people in academia that will speak about regular problems in the working in the kitchen, not speaking the language, or changing your last name so you could easier apply for some job and so on. And then I asked them kindly to participate in a discussion. It was just a talk that we would like kind of take from the kitchen on the podium. In this case was the aula built by Selman Selmanagić, a Bosnian architect that studies at Bauhaus as well. And it seems like some kind of in-between space. You don't know where you are actually watching the video. And we were speaking in two languages, in German and Serbian. And where they would, in like very naive way, advise me how to better integrate into German society. Based on their opinion, and whether should I marry as they did for documents, or should I change my last name to some Müller, or like something more fitting to the CV. And I think from there, watching from this perspective, of course, being here and living, some perspectives changed, but I think at that time was very much important for me to create this work and to bridge this gap, as I was saying, from We Have Wonderful Life work, where we were as a family just receiving this output when everything was sorted out. Well, in this moment, in this video, we were actually talking a lot about these first 1 or 2 years coming somewhere to a strange land where you are a foreigner, that not necessarily this country wants you even, and how to deconstruct this idea of wonderful life somewhere else, and how to struggle. Because when I was living in Bosnia, I knew just one side of the coin, thinking that my aunts from Germany are like amazing and rich and single and sexy and whatever. But once I became that person, I figured out that this was a very fake image. And we all know, at least coming from Balkan, that there is always everyone knows some aunt from Germany or from Austria that brings candies, that brings money. And in Germany, there is aunt from USA. So it's always somewhere, strangely, it's always feminine. And so from there, I also created, so here is some of the steels. Yeah, the work is structured in 5 chapters, and each chapter had a different topic. And the screenshot you see on the end, it's the last chapter that we were speaking actually about the return. And the title was The Day Before I Die, I'm going to go back to Bosnia, because in Bosnia the time is longer, so at least you will get a bit more time. So yeah, and then I created the chocolate, which was kind of funny part of the work. And I'm doing it myself, it's handmade, and I melt 4 different chocolates that were most commonly brought back to your family, or kind of acknowledged as good chocolates, like Lindt or Milka, Rittersport, and Shogotten, and I melt them together and build this very disturbing product that I don't guarantee you a good taste in this very fancy Western package. And but you know, the taste is questionable. So it's some kind of gesture when I'm giving back these chocolates of brand that is unknown, but the content is known, and imagining that it's gonna taste so good because everything inside it's amazing. It's actually false. And yeah, so this was some kind of side project that emerged within the Tanthaus Deutschland video work. And what I liked about this part is that it's so much interactive, and everyone here, at least in Berlin, because it's not Germany, I feel, in Berlin, and wherever I was going with these chocolates, it's amazing, like Turkish diaspora, like everyone was just taking these chocolates and bringing to themselves. So I like this, exactly, reaching to the people who are not consuming the culture in a sense, going to museums, but actually taking a chocolate home for them, you know, like they're finding it in a different place. So for me, this was the way how to reach to different groups of people that could recognize themselves in this. Yeah, this is from the project Tanthaus Deutschland.
Great, thank you so much, Mila. Žarko, could you maybe share with us your project, Building Blocks from Happiness, because it comments a little differently also on this mechanisms of pleasure, and you do talk about like very measurable elements as serotonin and adrenaline. I know the message is different, but yeah, if you can pull the image and tell us about this work. And then since we talked about personal mythology and also thinking forward, as Mila talked about the aunts living somewhere else, thinking backwards about your own upbringing, we thought we would discuss the Monumental structure project. So maybe these two works, if you could describe more.
Okay, just to try to share this. Okay, I hope you see. Mm-hmm. Okay, shortly, again, it is very difficult to sum it up. But anyway, when I came here to live, of course, a lot of bureaucratical issues. I started studying in 2013, but I couldn't do my visa properly, so I came basically in. Just kill me if I say basically next. So I came 2014 to live in Vienna, and already 2015 there was a first of the last migration crisis that happens on the borders of this fortress of Europe, which is EU, because people have to distinguish, which is very often not the case, that EU is not what Europe is. So there are countries from Europe which are not part of political togetherness of European Union. That's first thing. Second, people started coming, and immediately they're stopped on the borders of the EU, very often in Hungary. And of course, I was looking at those images and those people who are stopped there and who have, you know, like a lot of problems, beaten by the police, etc. So, and on the other hand, I started enjoying this Westerners' life, because I came from Serbia to live in Vienna, although Vienna is questionable if it is West, because I do believe that Vienna is the capital of Balkan. But, you know, like it's a different life and more enjoyable, and people around you are not bragging about some technical difficulties of life or bureaucratic issues, but basically they enjoy. And I was invited to do a work on Prater, which is a place where you go to entertain yourself if you're in Vienna. It's a district in Vienna with a lot of thematic parks and roller coasters, etc. So I was in the same time invited to reflect about happiness, but politically it was the biggest crisis of migration ever in Europe happens. So what I did, I wanted somehow to collide those two issues into one. And I was going to those roller coasters, enjoying the ride, and after, this is the method, I will just share the method and how the end in the end, how the work in the end looked like. I was just going to those roller coasters. I pick up 7 different vehicles, and after every vehicle, every day, I went, after the ride, I went immediately to the laboratory to take my blood results, and they measured serotonin and adrenaline. And those are 2 neurotransmitters very often associated or symbolized that personal feeling of happiness. So I wanted to represent those results from serotonin and adrenaline in my blood, which arise from these very happy drives, let's say, into the bricks. So I wanted to correlate the happiness of my personal happiness with the height of the wall, saying that the height of the wall is bigger and bigger with all the bigger happiness that we possess and that we have, that we somehow are so happy that those walls are so high that some people cannot reach them. And with those kind of walls, we started to construct or reconstruct this Fortress Europe. That's a short description of the project, and then I exhibited basically documentation of all those goings to the lab, and you can see here some results for serotonin and adrenaline represented in bricks. So I tried to build a wall from the results of for the serotonin and adrenaline. And the second project, which is I could really connect it with what Mila spoke, is monumental structures, and it starts somehow with personal photo albums, and it is very much related to the grandparents, especially to the to my Nana, Nana Lela. She's my grandmother, and a very important person for my construction in all those respects. You know, like what I became is somehow she's not only very important in my life, but she definitely participated in construction. Yes, parents and great love from the parents, but in the same time, I'm, you know, like a working class, they had to work, and I stayed basically with her and spent a lot of time with her. And she's amazing in so many respects, and uncanny in the same time, and very not strange, but not common, let's say. So she was, for example, I think that she's the first feminist in our districts, in the village that I come from. So she was carrying a pants when it was not so cool. She was, you know, like having the company or the factory for toys when it was not cool enough. You know, like definitely she somehow tried to be unique, and I think that she phenomenally successful in that. And I wanted to see how should I show my admiration for her and for my grandfather, and realize, okay, I want to make a movie, and spend two summers recording, asking them to, you know, like a lot of documentary shots from their life, etc. But then I was like not somehow satisfied with the outcome of that. Not satisfied. I had a lot of raw material, a lot of hours of recorded materials, a lot of performance that are reenacted again, what I have from memories and not imagination, but definitely from memories, as monumental structure refers to those monumental structure in the head as memories, as a part of the remembrance, and not as some kind of physical structure. But she interacted with me so deeply that I think that you know, like the whole projection of my person, somehow she's dedicated. So I wanted to focus on one part of our life. Let's say when I was very little, I was 3 years old, and she applied me to the competition of singing, and that's I would like to share a short video because somehow it is important and it resonates. but unfortunately it is in Serbian or Serbo-Croatian, and if I translate it, then it will not, definitely it will ruin part of the emotional attachment that comes from it. So I will try to explain a little bit. So she applied me for one song competition, which is called Susreti Sela. I don't know how to translate that in English, but basically it's a competition where amateur singers are going and they compete for a certain prize. I was 3 years old. This is some images before the competition when they were preparing me somehow, and she was somehow preparing me completely. I sang a song. That's why it is important and embedded into my being about Yugoslavia. And although I don't like to talk so much about Yugoslavia because of so many reasons, I think that we will touch upon some of those reasons afterwards. The song that in the end I won the competition is about prizing of Yugoslavia and the unity of people, etc. And she here reconstructs. Here she actually sings the song that I sang in that competition. This is the reconstruction performance. 3, 4.
Šta to brat bratu, sem bratu sprema, narod je rekao sve, narod neće podjele, mi smo Jugosloveni, mi smo Jugosloveni. Ovo je zemlja naših djedova, ovo je zemlja naših očeva, u ovoj zemlji rođeni mi smo za bratstvo, bratstvo, jedinstvo, narod.
And so on and so on. So this project, Monumental Structure, is not only about her, but it is about my grandfather and her. But yeah, that's the project. For this exhibition, which happened in Belgrade Gallery, Dom Omladine, 2019, I think, I pick up just certain, let's say, details from those videos, from those recorded footage, and some not found object. Basically, I took the object from that she used. For example, here on the image you see the construction which she used for selling her toy, and this toy of a dog over here is a toy that she was producing in that manufacturer. It's not a factory, it's a manufacturer of her. Yeah.
Great. So I think we are here approaching a second half of our conversation, and I encourage the audience to prepare the questions. You can leave them in chat, or as I said, you can later raise your hand and ask directly. My third question is like overall structurally, it will be quick, but with probably longer answers from both of you. Do you think the artist can make a political art, and why do you choose to act one way or another? I don't know who would like to go first, Mila or Žarko?
Do you want to go, Mila?
Yeah, you can go, Žarko, if you started. Yeah.
I think that art cannot be apolitical. You know, I really do believe that art cannot be apolitical, but in the same time, I think that artists very often try to take self-understanding as too important for the society, and in that respect they say, oh, I am doing these political actions or this or that, trying to interfere with the fibers of reality, believing that they are bringing something which is super important. Unfortunately, I believe that artists are just part of this neoliberal system that is killing us all, and basically because of this supply and demand issues of the so-called political art, whatever that means, because you cannot make a political art because we are social beings first, and art is not something that you produce in your cellar. So when it is exhibited, when it is part of this social discourse, when it becomes part of life, it becomes political too. But in the same time, as I said, current trends are such that artists are supplying the demand of what our art world or art market wants, and not what life wants. And I can give so many examples from Vienna, where, for example, people are trying to address some issues that are cool and trendy in the US, but oversee the racism, for example, that happens on the streets on Vienna. That comes with this expectation that some trends are more important than the other. In the end, unfortunately, I think that artists are just participating, not only artists, but artists, academicians, scholars, participating in this reproduction of the system that we all benefit from it in one sense, but in the other sense, or the other hand, that system kills us all. So I don't know, I'm not so optimistical about what is considered to be political, and basically it's a simulation of political agenda and simulation of engagement, in the sense that we just pretend. And when I say we, I put myself part in that crowd of people, we, because it is not about individual person, it is about the system, and we don't do anything to change that. Shortly, that's the...
We who are visible, more visible. Yeah, Mila.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Žarko, and that it's not possible to be apolitical, because, as he said, like, I mean, art is not made in vacuum. And in this moment, I can just also speak from my own personal perspective, and whatever it's created or observed, it comes from some experience, which that experience is influenced by many other factors. But yeah, none of my works, we were talking about this earlier, it's not solving some problem, or like, oh yeah, I'm gonna change the structure of this or that. And once I also figure out that this is not something I should stream so hardly to do this, I also became much more comfortable with myself and the way I speak about my own art and create it, and to not put it in a certain bucket. Because when I also moved to Berlin, and it's very easy when you're a young emerging artist to slip to certain trends and what it's maybe expected from you, or maybe what you see in other exhibition spaces. I'm talking even from the colors that are trendy, materials that are trendy, the way, like mediums that are trendy. And for me, at the end, like being honest to myself and knowing what at the moment my capacities are and what can I offer through my own experience, whether someone can actually relate to this, it's at the end the most important and honest way to produce this art. Like me faking and trying to tell you a story that I'm not even maybe able to say it, and just because I would get this or that exhibition or opportunity, actually it's not holding any water, we would say this in Serbian. And yeah, so also creating some work of art like Tante aus Deutschland here, for me was very subjective, or Burning Field as well. It came also from some personal urge and need to understand something for myself, firstly, but it was then taken from many different perspectives by the public themselves and created this like political story about it, because at this moment presented in this certain space took like great position and so on, which something I could not also influence the way the work will live afterwards. But I never wanted, for example, for Burning Field or Tante to reduce this very also subjective point of view and starting point actually, and then where it can develop. And I'm actually happy that can influence certain opinions, that it's not just my own work and like, oh, I'm like some kind of saint and this is what happened to me, poor me. But yeah, the way it's gonna be received by someone else, it's also, I think, important factor, how they will label it and say, and something that maybe it's not even in my own hands to control it.
Totally. Mila, can you share the image of Burning Fields? And
yes.
Yeah.
Moment. Sharing.
So this work has several, it was installed several times already, right? In different spaces.
And it's a recording in real time of burning of the field, which is around 10,000 square meters. And it's my inheritance land. And I grew up in the village, and it's actually quite common thing for the small scale farmers that are not supported by economy, like they do their own ways of fertilizing the land, and it's actually clearing the land by burning the crops and grass, so that after that immediately it's is it how we say plugged? Yeah, so that actually the ashes from the burned crops are fertilizing for the upcoming season. So I was at that time in Germany, and I was doing my thesis, and I was under a lot of pressure from my professors at that time to kind of get out of my comfort zone and produce something like more universal that would fit much more to European Union concept. And at the end of my studies, I kind of just bounced back and did what was more important to me. And I was a lot struggling with this idea that I might not return to my home and all this land that it's laying there from my grandma and from our houses, which is just, you know, if no one is working there, it just the soil, it needs work. And what would be my own responsibility towards this? And all these questions that at that time where I feel natural for me to ask myself, not necessarily that I have a question, an answer to them, I presented through this work, which was like contemplation of 2 hours watching this field that it's my inheritance land burning, and until it's completely burned, it fades into the night. And yeah, it was taken in a many different directions. Once I was speaking about the work, of course, there was like ecological aspects of this, or tradition, or knowledge passed from one generation to another, because me telling to my grandma, please don't burn the field, you're gonna damage ozone or whatever, atmosphere, like doesn't, you know, goes nowhere. But I understand this way of life. And yeah, but for me it was almost like I was seeing it as a self-portrait in some point, this work, and like kind of dealing with this idea, okay, I'm not coming back, and just kind of showing the feelings, what one person might feel when they leave their own home. And yeah, so it's 2 hours long burning field. And yeah, it was very interesting that everyone here were like, oh, is this in Europe? They are still burning fields. I was like, it's not just in Europe, but not in European Union. That's, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Mila. We have a question from Yelena, who asks Žarko, how do you understand the impact of technology and different tools on your practice? And then second question, could you please say a bit about the work Gastarbeiterinnen? My German is non-existent.
Okay. Should I say something about the technology? I think that the best way is maybe to elaborate on technology with mentioning this project that I actually developed for Mangelo's competition, which is called Regime of Dreams. Maybe I should try to share. Just a second.
Perfect.
So, a regime of dreams. Technology. First, general question. General answer. Technology is shaping society in so many respects. There is no inherently bad or good technology. We have to realize and to understand and try to control technology. That's my short answer to the technology and the impact of technology to our bodies, to our cognition, to our thoughts. There is no. I'm a little bit skeptical with people approach trying to like prohibit technological discussion or even development. Some people ethically, for example, they try to ban the further expansion in the understanding of artificial intelligence. I don't think that would be beneficial to the society and to the technology. So I don't believe that that is possible. On the other hand, I think that we have to, and we have so many examples from history how actually you cannot just destroy the machines and try to pretend that you solve the issues. I think that we have to understand that we have politically to try to control technology and to put it under the domain of control, not of private companies, but of the society in general. And somehow that brings me to the understanding of this work, which is related to the technology and what we can, how technology is impacting our dreams and how we can access those dreams. It is called Regime of Dreams. I developed it as a project. I'm very much interested in dreams and what happens when we are in those states where we are in the same time conscious and non-conscious, because we have agency in our dreams, especially if in lucid dreams. But for this project, I did something which is very much related to Serbia. It is somehow site-specific project because it relates to the operators or television with national coverage, those people broadcaster who are transmitted in the whole Serbia. What I did and why I started this project. This project I started because of the propaganda and what is actually negotiated and transmitted through those channels. But it started as not a joke, but everybody heard about this REM phase of the sleep, where the actual dreams happens. So when you're sleeping, in the phase of the dream, which is called a REM or a rapid eye movement, the actual dreams happens. But in the same time, ironically or not, the body for the regulation of television images broadcaster in Serbia is called a REM as well. Regulatory body for regulatory body for those national transmission broadcasters. So what I did is I put myself in the position to watch those channels. I wanted to do the installation with all the 7 channels that have national coverage, but first I did for the RTS one, which is the main channel in Serbia, and I watched it for the 18th hour straightly, and then I go to sleep while carrying the device that actually recorded EEG of my brain, and a colleague of mine could actually recognize when I'm in the dream state. She wakes me up so I can report the dreams into the camera. And then I recorded my dreams. And then I did that kind of very long performances for the all broadcasters. That's, again, in short, I don't know how much time we have, but that's in short the methodology that I applied to understand what are the content and how we are mediating those content that we are bombarded from the TV screens. And those are some of the images that, yeah, I don't know how detailed I should go, but yeah, that's the core of that project, which has, of course, technological impacts, because through the media you can actually form the opinion of people, and not only opinions which are somehow conscious and sane, but you can influence those unconscious decision making and in basically control.
Totally. One more question, if you would like to address it from the audience, is there a class struggle without identity politics?
Yeah, I can start on this question. Yeah, I saw the question, and I don't know why we would I see that in maybe some ways some would like to divide this, but I guess the key aspect of the identity politics is actually to build better understandings or relation to each other, not just on individual level, but also across the levels of different societies. And based on that, I guess the solidarity and the collaborative work will rise. So I don't, in my opinion, I would not exclude these two aspects, and they could actually reinforce each other in their own battles.
Mm-hmm. And Žarko?
I'm a little bit more skeptical, I have to admit. I think that some aspects of identity politics brought a little bit of emancipation, but in my opinion, a little bit of emancipation and more basically divide and less solidarity. I don't believe that that's the way how to proceed, although definitely some battles are won with that approach, and there are some fruits brought by the identity politics. But unfortunately, I think that we need more understanding and unity on the end. And in that respect, I believe in one single divide, and that's the divide between the rich and the poor. And I'm not so interested if I don't believe that. Yeah, that's maybe for some more time where we can actually a little bit more develop the discourse. But I do believe that it is possible to find some common denominator for the people to unite. And what is offered by identity politics, unfortunately, I don't see as a way for now.
Thank you both. I think we're approaching the end of our talk for today. So if there are no more questions, but please keep raising your hand and dropping them in chat if you still want to ask Mila and Žarko anything. But my final question for today was more, I don't know, maybe like dreamy as a postscript to the talk. If you were to create a time-lapse image representing your home country, let's say the country where you were born, right? What location, event, or phenomenon would that be?
Wow, this this is very yeah, as you said, dreamy question. And yeah, thinking of that, and the only thing it's always when I think of Bosnia and my current feelings. I was also recently in Bosnia, and in last 7 years, it's constantly repeating the same feeling. So I see Bosnia as some kind of personification of quicksand. The way whenever I go and visit, I feel like I'm just gonna not be able to leave again. It's just gonna swallow me. But it's a false feeling, of course. It's something that, you know, representation of quicksand, that you're gonna die once you are caught by it. It's false as well. And this is the same feeling for me when I go to Bosnia. And my image of it, unfortunately, the progress and evolution of that space in terms of when I left and when I come back, or my own understanding what Bosnia is, maybe it's completely different than what actually is, because I'm not living there. I just have imagination of that place. It's rather like, in some terms, sad still, because of such a potential, and this potential is unused and not having a fertile soil to grow. It's something that, yeah, hurts me as well. I don't know if that's actually the answer of this, like, timeless, how it should be answered, but yeah, this is my own.
That's a very vivid image, the way you described it. I think it's a really good metaphor. Žarko, do you have any ideas to how to describe Serbia?
When you send those images, I struck myself, you know, like thinking about the possible answer, and definitely I have plenty of answers, but I was wondering, should I answer from this Westerner's gaze perspective, or my internalization of Western perspective? That's how divided personality I am, you know, like, or or should I ask you? Should I answer? Like more not honest, but what are more kind of honest to the emotional relation or something like that. So I have at least two answers. First, if I go with this Westerners gaze, how I would represent my country. When I say my country, it's basically the region what they call now Western Balkans, and it's eternal mud. It's a subconsciousness of Europe, so it's eternal mud. I'm trying to make one project based on somehow how Balkan is imagined in the Western literature and films, and everybody immediately, clicks with Kusturica. But when I'm thinking about homeland, if I may put it like this, it's definitely what I miss is the people somehow. Definitely people and Kinotech in Belgrade. That's the important stuff. And in the end, the metaphor or the work that somehow come to my imagination when I was trying to answer is this plastic brain in the dimension of the real brain, but torn apart from the wall that it is, concrete, and constantly, it's a time lapse of that brain hitting the wall constantly. That's the image which I would like to
Wait, does this object exist, or that's what you're imagining?
That's how I am imagining it. Maybe it will come to existence in some way or the other, because I'm, working with the brains very often, and so it could be interpreted as this brain drain, which is super important issues economically, educationally, and in so many respects speaking. So to refer to that, but also to refer as to the issue of possibility of throwing stones and protesting and rioting. So it's an ambiguous image, let's say, that I had in mind. This kind of riot protesting, in the same time throwing stones or brains, or this brain drain which is somehow stopped. Those are the two images that are combined into one, because for me ambiguity and uncertainty are super important, and I like to play with those. So yes, that's how I would.
Interesting. Sounds like an alchemic material, right? Like the mutable from plastic to stone. Well, thank you so much, Mila and Žarko. We really look forward to hosting you in New York at Residency Unlimited and seeing where you develop, how you developed your projects. I know there are great new things coming up for both of you, and I encourage those of you who are listening today and those who will watch the recording to check the artists' websites. We'll link them in the description of the video at the end. Oh wait, we have a question from Sandra Bradvich. If we all are okay, I'm gonna read it now. I'm glad that I noticed it. Hey Žarko, since you were mentioning dreams, maybe this Berlin online platform magazine could be interesting. Okay, that's a recommendation. Sorry, I'm rushing a little bit, and there is the oniric space recommendation for Žarko. Yeah, any closing remarks from the two of you before we log off today?
No, I just want to thank you for organizing this talk, and to also previous conversation we had also between Žarko and me and you. I really like it, and I'm looking forward to New York and to meet people in person. So thank you for this.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
I also want to talk for this opportunity to talk. I also have to mention that I enjoy our previous talk and discussion, which were not broadcasted, but I really enjoy, and I'm very much looking forward going and check that New York from the dreams. So we'll see how it will in the end look like, and if the world continue to exist in September when my residency is scheduled. I don't know, because it was changed already 2 or 3 times, that it worries me a little bit, but I hope that New York will stay there, and I will be in position to visit and enjoy it.
Maybe we can just speed up the time somehow, Runa, to...
So I'm very, as you know, as the executive director of this organization, I'm very much looking forward to hosting both your residencies. And I know that it's been very complicated in terms of schedules and things like that, but hopefully everything will be fine. And thank you for this wonderful talk. It will be recorded, so available for consultation. And wishing you all a great weekend. Thank you, Lilia.
Thank you, and thank you to Camille, who's always with us, supporting us through.
Yeah, throughout.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.